75 years ago on Thursday, Allied forces began the largest amphibious invasion in the history of the beaches of Normandy. By the 4th of July of that year, 1 million Allied troops had landed to begin an 11-month campaign to free Europe from the Nazis. Behind those lines and awaiting liberation was a Dutch girl named Audrey Kathleen van Heemstra-Rusten. I think I got that right. The future Audrey Hepburn. Thanks to award-winning Pittsburgh author Robert Matzen, Hepburn's story in World War II is now coming to light. We are so honored to have Robert Matzen with us today. Robert, welcome to the show again. This is your third time on the show because you've written 3 terrific books, all featuring Hollywood people, but their connections to World War II. And this particular book, I'm just going to hold it up here, Dutch Girl, Audrey Hepburn and World War II, is an absolutely fascinating read. I've enjoyed it very much. What got you interested in Audrey Hepburn?
Well, I was working on my book, Mission, about Jimmy Stewart and his combat missions as a B-24 pilot. And that took me to Arnhem in the Netherlands to do some research. And I heard that Audrey Hepburn had spent the war there as a girl, a teenager.
And nobody would have known that.
No, and so I looked for more information on it. And I couldn't find very much, and I thought, wait a minute, you know, nobody's written a book on this. And so that started me off, and I wrote as fast as I could because I didn't know if somebody else was going to, you know, pick up on this idea.
You know, your book is just released in April, I guess, and you even got mentioned in People magazine. That's got to be a big boost to sales.
They call that the second cover, and as soon as that hit, the day that hit, the book became a bestseller, and it's been there ever since.
Wow. You know, so tell us a little bit about Audrey Hepburn. What I recall, and I've read this book cover to cover, and again, I totally recommend it to everybody. She came from a very interesting family situation. Her mother actually had met Adolf Hitler. Describe that.
That's where I had to start the book because it's so dramatic. Here is this Dutch aristocrat who is in Hitler's office, enamored of Hitler in 1935, meets Hitler, and she is one of a group of what I call lipstick Nazis. The social set in England and the Netherlands was just captivated by Hitler, who was bringing Germany back from the brink of the Great Depression. And Audrey's mother, Ella von Heemstra, kept her pro-Nazi connections and pro-Nazi sympathies even after the occupation of the Netherlands began. And it became Audrey's deep, dark secret for the rest of her life.
But Audrey's father was English.
He was English, but he was also a fascist. And he became a Nazi agent before the war. So he was one of those people that went around looking at installations and highways in England and communications and what should the Germans hit when they invade.
But Audrey Hepburn herself actually was part of the Dutch resistance, and her uncle was killed by the Nazis. Tell us about that story.
That was the big plot turn right there. That changed Ella's viewpoint away from the Nazis. It brought the von Heemstra family together, and yeah, it launched Audrey's career as like a junior resistance member, doing all kinds of little things for the resistance against the Germans.
Can you describe some of the things? I mean, she's a teenager in occupied Holland in the 1940s, right?
Yeah, but the thing is that the Dutch resistance relied on young people because the Germans didn't suspect them of being capable of doing things. So Audrey was running food and messages to downed Allied airmen who were hiding in the forest. She was dancing for the resistance in what they called Black Evenings, Zwarte Avonden, which raised money for Jews who were in hiding in Velp, and there were hundreds of Jews in hiding in Velp, this little town where she was living.
Right. In fact, that was another interesting sidelight of the story, is how much the Dutch did more to protect their Jewish Dutch citizens than most countries did. And there was a real active effort to hide them.
Yeah, especially in this little town, Velp, it became the most important town in the Netherlands to the Nazi ruling regime because they all retreated there after D-Day. And so, yeah, the fact that here is Seyss-Inquart, you know, the ruler of the Netherlands for the Germans, and all around him are Jews in hiding, and Audrey's helping to feed them, and it's just a cool story.
It really is. And then comes liberation, and it seemed to me that it was botched. I mean, they weren't quite liberated as quickly as they might have been. There were all kinds of things that went wrong militarily.
Well, yeah, that was Operation Market Garden, was supposed to liberate them in September of '44, and that was the Bridge Too Far battle. And that 75th anniversary is coming up, and I'll be over there for that. But when that failed, it dragged the war out for the Dutch people, and then it got really tough, really nasty.
A horrible winter and a lot of suffering. We only have about 30 seconds left, Robert, but why haven't we heard this story about Audrey Hepburn? We know all about her. What a terrific actress in so many classics, but we've never heard of this connection. Why was that?
A couple of reasons. She didn't like talking about herself. She was a very closed-off introvert, but mostly she had this secret to protect, which was about her mother and her Nazi sympathies at the beginning of the war.
Yeah. Well, I can't recommend this book enough. It's Dutch Girl, Audrey Hepburn, and World War II by Robert Matzen. Robert, thank you again for coming in and sharing. I can't wait for your fourth book. We're going to have you back whenever you tell us you're ready.
I'll hold you to it.
Thank you again.